Roll the.
Hey there, it's Gary Parrish. Welcome back to CBS Sports Eye on College Basketball Podcast, where we sometimes discuss camel fighting dodo birds. Leaky Black. Matt Norlander is here with me. If you're watching on YouTube, you know what to do. To that like button. Shouts to Brandon Davies. And if you haven't yet subscribed to the CBS Sports College Basketball YouTube channel, please also do that while you're here. Let's get into it. Big news in the world of college basketball today. Gonzaga has made it official after Brett McMurphy reported last week that the Zags would be joining the Pac-12, and that was refuted by a whole bunch of folks. You'll never guess what happened. Gonzaga announced this morning that they are, in fact, leaving the West Coast Conference to join the Pac-12. Norlander, let's just stop there. Your thoughts on what is obviously a big move for both Gonzaga University and the remade Pac-12 conference.
Yeah. I did an HQ hit earlier today. Not a surprising move. I was had a little bit of a staycation last week. I appreciate you getting the pod done while I was away, but I think it was on the Monday of the vacation, if you will, when got a few texts on this kind of stuff, and I was like, oh, come on, man. We can't even wait until October for the Gonzaga stuff. And what was signaled to me, I guess it's been 8 days, was that Gonzaga wasn't in full agreement yet to join the Pac-12, but this was probably going to be headed that way. They just had to figure out some financial assurances from the Pac-12, and they got that done in quick order, and they got it done. By the way, in doing this, giving the Pac-12 a huge win. We don't need to totally coda and reset what we podcasted on 3 weeks ago, but we can touch on some of the stuff. And I do want to circle back to the Memphis stuff before we get out of here, GP. But this was a huge win for the Pac-12 because what I made the case for on the podcast and in column form previously remains true. There was no single program, university that could have given this league more positive publicity and more validity to its competitive stature across the college landscape than Gonzaga in men's basketball. And in talking to a variety of sources this morning and this afternoon, apparently the Pac-12 was really emphatic in reinforcing that although football was the necessary driver to giving this conference life again, and for obvious reasons, it is going to be just as emotionally and spiritually, if it can't be actually technically financially invested in men's basketball, the push is going to be there. Gonzaga needed to be convinced, and it was. I was told it's going to be close to a full revenue share. It doesn't have football, and again, the details of that are still not known because it doesn't have a media deal yet. But the speculation, and this is speculative, was that Gonzaga through many different means, not just in what it got in the WCC media deal and NCAA tournament units, but everything else that it was able to do, Gonzaga was able to, as a member of the WCC, bring in somewhere, north of $5.5 million as an athletic department. And now, can it get that number? It hopes to get that number somewhere in the 10 million range. Can it get there? Obviously a huge financial commitment, because I actually had one source in the WCC hit me today. I'm going to give you exactly what they told me. The expectation is now that Gonzaga is leaving the WCC, it's going to forfeit all of the if Gonzaga makes the tournament, as it should, this upcoming season and next season, it's got 2 more years in the WCC. It's going to forfeit every single dollar that it makes in the NCAA tournament in those units. The WC gets to keep those. So when you add all of that up, in addition to everything else, Gonzaga is going to willingly leave somewhere around $10 or $11 million on the table as members of the WCC. Obviously, Gonzaga's got people that are very, very invested in trying to make the best financial situation possible. And here it is, going to the Pac-12. The expectation is the media deal will be on par with the current Mountain West one. So that's the financial part of it. I just want to at least cover that initially because, frankly, that was as important as anything else in actually making this a reality. I think the thing that people watching this podcast, listening to it, and sports fans care about is, okay, let's talk about a big-time program going into the Pac-12, what that means for my enjoyment of the sport. But as you all know all too well, GP, the reality is that a school doesn't make this kind of decision unless it's going to make a lot of financial sense. And for Gonzaga, it very clearly did, as also evidenced by, and I saw Chris Vanini actually first put this out there, I believe, and I I quote tweeted him, so credit to him on that, but I was told the same. 50% revenue share on NCAA tournament units for every member going forward, not just Gonzaga. That was a crucial thing to get Gonzaga over the finish line because, for everything that this is good for with the Pac-12, and I do think that this gives this league, not knowing who the next team will be, they still got to bring one more full member that has football, not even knowing who that will be. It could be a school that's completely underwhelming, or maybe they can convince Memphis, again, we'll get there, to do that. This conference now, I think, is positioning itself to be a firm number 6 in the pecking order in men's college basketball. And that can be good enough. That should be good enough. It will be a multi-bid league, and it should have an expectation of getting at least 3 teams into the NCAAs beginning in 2027, which will be the first year that this conference is eligible to play in the NCAA tournament. So it's a bummer for the WCC. Gonzaga is willingly giving up a real stranglehold on running that conference, not just on the court, GP, but in dictating how the schedule has been made and a lot of how the financials have been broken up. They are a one-of-one college story. Mark Few has built a Hall of Fame resume by taking a program that no one had basically heard of other than the fact that John Stockton played there on his way to the NBA and now turned it into an unquestioned top 10 program in the country. And they're going to leave a very, very good situation for them to transition to something better. I'm not surprised by it. I did expect it. And I think the key thing, if you want to really go inside the Gonzaga athletic department, Mark Few, he has been looking for 10 years to get Gonzaga into a situation where whenever he does retire, and I don't know if it will be in 2 years, 3 years, or 10 years, whenever that happens, he wants the program to be best positioned to be successful after he leaves. Obviously, in my opinion, this does that for Gonzaga with giving no assurances that Gonzaga can remain top 10 level once he's moved on. He's obviously a very special kind of coach. Replicating and duplicating his success won't be easy, but a huge day for college basketball and big for reinforcing some real valid establishment out west. This new Pac-12 isn't the old Pac-12. The old Pac-12 never invited Gonzaga, but the fact that it has now, I think, was a crucial and necessary decision to its validity nationally in the sport.
I don't even really understand the counter argument to Gonzaga doing this, other than the idea of leave well enough alone. I understand the theory behind that, but as you just laid it out, this is a university that is going to make more money in this new league and going to be surrounded by better men's basketball programs in this new league. I'm with you. I think the Pac-12, however it ends up looking, is going to establish itself immediately, like on day one, as the 5th best football league and the 6th best men's basketball league. Is that right?
I think that's probably where it should land. Football, I can't speak to with 100% certainty. Just as an aside, like the UTEP is now going to the Mountain West, and as one of our colleagues, name will be removed, joked, but not so much joked in our Slack chat. The Mountain West actually added a program that has won a national championship in men's college basketball today. UTEP actually did do it. You might want to go look up Texas Western. Kind of a big deal there. Yeah. So I think that's a great get for that conference, particularly in football. But that's a really good area that really supports a university, and UTEP might have some, I don't want to overstate it, but it could have some not sleeping giant elements to it, but a program that can really elevate there. I bring that up only to say I think the Mountain West is doing as best of a job possible as it can to sustain itself. The American obviously is, I would argue, too big in a weird way. But I think in football, it's got a really healthy chance. In men's basketball, unless the A-10 can really start figuring some stuff out here, and many could argue that it's well past due, I do think that its lack of size, let's just assume that the Pac-12 finishes at 10 members in basketball, I think that will really, really help its case to be the 6th best league. And so I don't want to completely step on your point here, but you teed me up. And I do think this is something that we're reacting to heavy now. Then everyone's going to go back for 2 years, and then we'll circle back 3, 4, 5 years from now. And I do think that we will look up and say, well, damn, look at the Pac-12. It might just be just shy of being a high major, but it's going to clearly be the best multi-bid league. And as things stand now, it can always change as it's comprised. I would be surprised if this isn't a 3-bid league on the regular once we get to the back half of the decade.
Right. And the A-10 more often than not is going to be a 1-bid league. The AAC going forward more often than not is going to be a 1-bid league. I think the Mountain West, given the schools that are in there, more often than not is going to be a 1-bid league. Nothing's guaranteed, but I am comfortable and confident suggesting that if today's October 1st, 2024, on October 1st, 2026, we'll be looking at a Pac-12 football league that is the best of the others. and we'll be getting ready for a basketball season, and we'll look at all the preseason rankings, and we'll go, well, it's clear that's the best league outside of the Big 12, SEC, Big 10, ACC, and Big East. This is the next best basketball league. That's where we're going to be. So I think it's much easier to argue in favor of Gonzaga doing this than it is to try to argue against it. Because the only argument against it would be, things are going all right. Why are you messing with this? And
our friend Mike DeCourcy has made that point in column form recently. He is stating that Gonzaga will, by doing this, is going to hit a point where it's going to look up, check its surroundings, check its situation, and say, we don't have it as good now as we used to. That there's a chance that he will wind up being correct, and more often than not, although so many teams have switched conferences now that that the stew is just it's so incestuous that you can't even who even say anymore in terms of what will be good and what will be not. But we've seen a lot of teams that have made conference switches and not been more competitive for it.
Right.
There's a chance he's right. I would lean more likely than not that Gonzaga is better for this GP, but it comes with the caveat. Brian Michelson is the associate head coach on that staff. He's going to take over for Mark Few whenever he retires again. We don't know when that is, and there is no guarantee of that. So while that might wind up being true, it could be as true for the fact that replicating Mark Few's success is harder than whatever conference that you happen to be in.
Right. That's going to be the issue. Replicating what you've done, regardless of what league you're in. And I don't think one will necessarily have anything to do with the other. I love Mike. I'm not here to argue against his points specifically as much as I'm here just to make my own. If Gonzaga is able to operate the next 20 years at the level in men's basketball at which it's been operating for the previous 20, Gonzaga will be the best men's basketball program in the new Pac-12, similarly to the way they've been the best basketball program in the WCC.
It'll be the best program in the country, Parrish. Look at their record over the past 20 years. Right, shy of winning a national title, like Gonzaga fans watching, listening, just dial it down a little, like hope that you can achieve 85% of what you've done, and you will be thrilled. What Mark Few has done, GP, has been insane. And so you got to bring some, and I know you're about to set this up, you got to bring at least that into the equation as well. You're going to go into a tougher league, you're going to accrue more losses, and you're probably going to dial back the non-conference scheduling just a little bit. If you can maintain a top 10 status nationally, it will be incredible after the Mark Few era is over.
That's right. And if you can maintain the top 10 ranking, the top 20 ranking, then you're still the best men's basketball program in your league. That's the point I'm trying to make. I can't compute how moving to the Pac-12 would make that less of a thing unless, you're just not operating at that level. There is no prospect in the country who is like, man, I really wanted to play for the Zags in the WCC, but I'm not going to do it now in this new Pac-12. That doesn't exist. Mm-hmm. They'll have more money, theoretically, to buy players. I only see good reasons to do this. The most obvious counter argument would be, leave well enough alone. You've been in a good place. It's set up for you. The problem, of course, with that theory is that it assumes you're always going to be where you're at. Basketball programs that operate outside of the traditional power structure, they often come and go. There was a time in both of our lives where UNLV was the biggest brand in the sport.
Nailed it. Just to school. When you said that, GP, that's the exact school that popped in my head.
All right. What if once upon a time, UNLV was offered a clear upgrade in conference affiliation, more money, better members, the whole deal, and they just said, we're not doing it because we're really rocking and rolling where we're at. And as long as we keep rocking and rolling where we're at, this is the life we want. Well, what happened? When's the last time you thought about UNLV besides last week when the quarterback quit the team? I mean, it's gone. And what if Butler would have subscribed to this exact same thing in a smaller sample size and said, all right, the Atlantic 10 wants us, and who knows where that could lead. But we just went to back-to-back national championship games straight out of the Horizon League. We got this thing pretty good. Like, why would we move? This is working out okay. Well, you move because eventually Brad Stevens going to leave. Eventually, your reality is going to change. And eventually, you just want to look up and be in the better neighborhood. Don't trick yourself after experiencing the Brad Stevens run to think this is just the way life's going to be in our Horizon League. Instead, use that run to get to a better neighborhood. And that is part of Brad Stevens' legacy. He helped an entire university get to a better neighborhood. And then, of course, it moves to an even better one in the Big East. What if Temple? There was a time in my lifetime where Temple was a pretty big basketball program operating outside of the traditional power structure.
Well, it's in the wrong. I would argue it's in the wrong neighborhood now, and that's been made for football decisions.
Yeah, but what I'm just saying, it doesn't even matter. Nobody even thinks about Temple ever anymore. So these things.
Some people in Las Vegas were thinking about Temple last season, if you recall. But yeah, I know what you're saying.
These things change, and I think if you stay in the WCC and you don't have many great reasons other than because it's been a great home to us for a long time. You look up, Mark Few's retired. The next Gonzaga coach might be a Naismith Memorial Hall of Famer. Or remember what happened when they tried to replace Brad Stevens? Like, it can go badly, really badly. And then you just be sitting up. Imagine Gonzaga in 10 years with a lesser coach. They've fallen off. They're never ranked anymore. They're still like one of the best WCC programs, but they're never ranked anymore. Right. St. Mary's has fallen off because Randy Bennett retired.
Yeah.
And you're just sitting there like, hold up, we could have been in the Pac-12. And I know it's not the Pac-12 that used to exist. And I know it's not the Big 12 they might have wanted to join, or the Big East they might have wanted to join, but I'll keep this as simple as I can keep it. Off the strength of their men's basketball program, Gonzaga University is going to be able to move to a new neighborhood, as long as we're talking about conferences as neighborhoods. And in this neighborhood, they're going to have better neighbors than they've ever had, and they're going to have more money than they've ever had. That's a move worth making. I endorse this. I can't begin to predict exactly how it'll go, but I just know that doing this, or at least I feel confident doing this, is better than sitting in a league that you could really regret sitting in if the second your program's not operating at this extremely high level that it's been operating for a long time.
Well, and consider this to the new neighbors thing you were just saying. Boise State, recent NCAA tournaments. Colorado State, recent NCAA tournaments. Oregon State, it was flukish, but they did make the Elite Eight in the COVID one. And Oregon State traditionally hasn't been that good, but they did get there recently. San Diego State obviously makes the title game against UConn 2 seasons ago. Utah State has been a stepping stone job for a number of coaches, but it has been reliable, and that's obviously a fierce home court environment there to the tournament. Washington State, now it lost its coach to Stanford, but obviously is coming off an NCAA tournament appearance. They've got a lot of schools that have been in the tournament recently, and they're going forward with this momentum. And while this specific viewpoint of it probably wasn't a North Star on Gonzaga's decision, what you were getting at, I think, is key here. You probably need to make a calculation, whether consciously or not, that you can't 100% bank on the idea that you will be a top 10 program in perpetuity. It's not reasonable. And if and when you go through some down periods, whether that's while Few is still there, or it's after he's retired, or it's the coach that replaces Michelson again, Brian Michelson, who's in line to succeed Few, you want to be in a situation that allows you to recover from that more quickly than you otherwise would have. And that's why I would argue the Pac-12 is a better situation for Gonzaga moving forward, not knowing what awaits this program competitively on the court come 2027, 2029, 2032. If you're in the Pac-12 and the Pac-12 can be set up to succeed and be viable as we believe it will, then you are helping yourself out significantly, because then you are making yourself also more attractive to potential job candidates, et cetera, down the line. On the WCC front, real quick here, this does give some real life and hope to pretty much every other non-St. Mary's school in that conference, which is certainly something to note there. I did hear from a WCC source earlier in the day that they obviously hate losing Gonzaga. You don't want to lose Gonzaga by any means. The one silver lining here is that you've got 4 or 5 schools that have been trying, and one of them now is going to, at least one of them will begin to be able to break through and be a program that can matter beyond within the actual walls of your conference. So that's at least something, although I would keep in mind.
I would argue this. This is not good for the WCC, obviously.
Yeah.
It is great for the WCC men's basketball coaches.
That's basically what the source was telling me today. Yeah. Correct. If you're WCC coach, this is really good news. I don't anticipate the Pac-12 trying to get St. Mary's. I was actually told St. Mary's facilities and its home gym was like one for a variety. That was a major thing. I wouldn't anticipate it, so I don't think that's going to be the case. Grand Canyon, which is just about to join the WCC and obviously has a controversial standing because of its previous like unabashed for-profit situation, and now it's it's trying to overcome those elements there, which frankly makes some people in higher education blanch just a little bit. I don't anticipate the Pac-12 going the Grand Canyon route, but I wouldn't put it out. I think the WCC's powers that be are certainly very aware of the fact that the Pac-12 could try and get one more football included school, and then if they're at 8 and they say let's just go to an even 10, why can't we just see if Grand Canyon will do it? Because as one source explained it to me earlier on Tuesday, money is no object there, and they will simply be willing certainly to do anything and everything if they get a Pac-12 level kind of invite. So just keep that in mind. With that being said, anything else on Gonzaga, or can we just quickly take a detour and talk Memphis here real quick?
Hey, I'm always ready to talk.
Okay, let's talk Memphis. I want to hear your opinions on a lot of this stuff, but here's what I've got. 4 industry sources I talked to this morning and this afternoon. I don't think I teed one of them up on Memphis. I think they all voluntarily brought this up. One said the Memphis thing is not dead. Another speculated that the buyout fee with the American might be $10 million less in a year. I haven't checked that out. This is what one source was telling me. And don't put out the idea that just because Memphis officially rejoined with the American that this couldn't happen, that Gonzaga coming on board gives them more reason to go back to the bargaining table. And then I had 2 other sources say the Pac-12, and these are people out west, so this isn't, for transparency's sake, I'm not talking to like, an AD in the Big East or anything about this. These are people that are tangentially connected to this in one way or another. Basically said like the Pac-12 needs to absolutely go back to Memphis right now and try and get them to be the 8th school, because they were the linchpin. Had they decided not to sign back up with the American, like the other schools would have followed. And now that you have Gonzaga in and it's official, like they have signed on, they are on board. You got Utah State, which I was kind of unplugged for a little bit. I think Utah State might have signed just ahead of Memphis saying no, or I don't remember. The timeline on that. Do you think that still has life? And I would define it in these terms, GP. Do you think that still has life in terms of Memphis could double back on its word in this calendar year and say we're going to be the 8th school, or knowing what and that AD and what he has said and what school officials have been saying privately or publicly, do you think they have truly aligned themselves for at least a calendar year to stay in the American? Because I'll tell you right now, behind the scenes, the Pac-12 wants to really get this done. You need to be going to Memphis because your other alternative options right now are not great, to say the least, and there's no reason why that should be dead.
Yeah, like the Pac-12 should either come back to Memphis, or Memphis should like take its pride, set it aside, and call back to the Pac-12 and say, "Hey, you want to talk?" Like the AD more or less last week in a press conference explaining Memphis's decision to pass on the Pac-12 offer. Made it clear that all the people I was talking to before have my number. They can call back. I will answer. And he made it clear we didn't pass on the Pac-12. We passed on the offer the Pac-12 gave us.
Okay, and so he made that he was. I saw some of it. I didn't see his whole thing. So
it was confusing. Like it was mostly good, but he said stuff like we didn't pass. He seemed bothered. People kept saying Memphis passed on the Pac-12. He was like, we didn't pass on the Pac-12. We passed on the offer the Pac-12 presented us. They said, here's our offer. We need to answer. And we said, no, thank you. But if they want to call back, we'll listen. And so the obvious question for him was, well, did you counteroffer? And he said no, and seemed to say that the reason is because there wasn't time for that, which made no sense to most people. What do you mean there's not time for that? Watch this. Offer me $2.5 million. Just let's do this in real time.
I'm thinking, $2.5 million. What do you think?
Make it 20 and we'll there.
I'm sorry, I have no time for this.
See how quickly I did that? It took seconds. I don't know why it takes. I don't know how you didn't have time to.
You got to call a board of regents meeting. It can be a whole hassle.
Like I just did that in
not on the golf course.
I did that in a matter of seconds. It didn't even seem difficult. Right off the top of my head, I just said, "Give me 20, and we'll send out the press release." And But he didn't do that. So, but he did make it clear, if they want to talk, we'll talk. I don't. If I had to predict, do I think they're going to be in the Pac-12? Not necessarily at this point. I don't think I'd predict that. But if I were Memphis, I'd be on the phone with the Pac-12 and I'd be negotiating, and I would negotiate for the best deal I could get. And you ready for this? And then I would go. I would negotiate for the best deal I could get, and then I would go. Because here's what is going to be Memphis fans' reality in 2 years. You're going to look up, and I don't care how well you're doing in football and men's basketball, you're going to look up and be in a league in the AAC where you don't recognize anybody. There's not a single other program that has accomplished the things you've accomplished as consistently as you've accomplished them, or even seriously aspires to. You're not going to be able to look at anybody and go, they're like us. This is a good neighbor. You're in a neighborhood and it's deteriorating, and now you don't even recognize your neighbors, and none of them are people you're proud of. All right. That's option A. And while you're sitting in that option A, you're going to watch season ticket sales go down, fundraising go down, NIL commitments go down. Because I'm just telling you, boots on the ground here, people are over this. They don't care about this anymore. Like the people who are proponents of Memphis staying in the AAC talk about being a big fish in a little pond. And man, if you're a big fish in a little pond and you just you're running things, then your fan base will get excited, except they won't. Because you ready for this? Memphis football was picked to win the AAC this season. Season opener, less than 27,000 people. Nobody cared. Memphis basketball, as chaotic as that situation's been, will be picked to win the AAC.
Yep.
Go ask them over in the athletic ticket office how many season tickets they've sold. Nobody cares. So
nobody cares.
Nobody cares.
It hasn't reached the stage of you're saying that it's apathy. It's true apathy there.
I'm telling you that I could find a season ticket holder right now who's just been buying season tickets for decades, and they've already purchased these tickets. And I say, name me 3 Memphis basketball players, and they can't do it. It's just no, they're out. And, when I was growing up, it was just like, if you wanted to watch basketball in Memphis, it was the Tigers. Well, now, there's an NBA franchise that has John Morant in Nike commercials. It's a different deal. People are out on this version of Memphis in this version of the AAC. And you're going to look up and you're going to see a league, and it's going to be, I'm just making this up, it'll be, and Saturday night on a network to be determined, it's number 8 Gonzaga at number 17 San Diego State. And you're going to go, man, we could have been a part of that. Yeah. And you'll be sitting there with regret. I know it doesn't make geographical sense. Nothing does these days. Stanford's situation doesn't make geographical sense, but Stanford's still doing it. Right. Cal's situation doesn't make geographical sense, but Cal's still doing it. Geography is not something that it should be considered the most important factors in decision-making right now. And yet Memphis seemed to, on some level, point to geography. And then I said, even before the Memphis athletic director held a press conference to explain the rationale for passing, that I'm confident people over there can show me a spreadsheet and put all the numbers down and say, hey, just once we got to pay this $22.5 million, we are underwater. This is a bad financial deal. The point I tried to make is that it's only a bad financial deal if it's bad relative to what your reality will be if you pass on it. So I understand how you can show me a spreadsheet and it's like, this is just too much money to leave this league. But how much money are you costing yourself staying in this league? How much is it worth in millions of dollars giving your fans something new, if nothing else, something new to believe in, to get excited about, to think about? You could at least look at Gonzaga, San Diego State in basketball and say, hey, they're like us. We've played in multiple national championship games. Gonzaga's played in multiple national championship games. San Diego State was in one 2 years ago. These are pretty good neighbors. You can't do that in the AAC, but you could do that in the Pac-12. Football side, we've played in, some big bowl. We played in the Cotton Bowl. Boise State's been in a Fiesta Bowl. Like there's, Washington State, Oregon State, they've had their moments here that you can at least, they're pretty good neighbors. You're not going to have that anymore. And so what's the cost of that? Is that 5 million? Is that 10 million? Is that 50? I don't know. But when you strictly just put all the numbers as you know them right now into a spreadsheet, it's always going to spit out, this is too expensive to move. But how expensive is it going to be to stay? And how beat down are your fans going to be by staying? I think that's the variable you've got to really focus in on. And respectfully, I don't think the decision makers at the University of Memphis have properly grasped just how beat down the fan base is of decades of realignment disappointment. Never once over the past 2 decades, as Memphis has been doing everything it can, including using FedEx to buy sponsorships in leagues. Never once, except the one time when the Big East came and got them, and then 10 months later it blew up and never really happened. Never once has a better league came to Memphis and said, we want you. And this time a better league came to Memphis and said, we want you, and they passed. And I understand how it might make financial sense in a spreadsheet that you're creating today, but that doesn't account for how the fans are going to feel going through this and just being left on the outside again. And I think that Memphis will. I hope that Memphis doesn't look back on this with regret, because ultimately I want what's best for the University of Memphis, even if it means I'm wrong. But my fear is that they're going to look back on this and go, man, it wasn't the Big 12 or the ACC, but it was better than what we had, and it's better than where we're at, and we should have gone.
Yeah, what's best for Memphis and best for the Pac-12, in my estimation, is for them to figure out a way to make it happen. If not, shy of that, we wait and see on what the next school will be. They need at least one more school that plays football and comes over in all sports in order to qualify as a conference to be eligible for not just the college football playoff, but every single Division I NCAA tournament championship. So we wait and see on that. But a big day for the Pac-12 and a big day for Gonzaga. Again, this will be official on July 1 of 2026 when the Pac-12 gets reborn.
We'll switch gears when we come back. Sad news from the world of basketball. Dikembe Mutombo, Hall of Famer, and obviously a college basketball star at Georgetown, passed away at the age of 58 after a battle with brain cancer. That news broke yesterday morning. We'll spend a few minutes on it next, but first, let's get a word from our partners.
It's a team almost too good to be true.
You guys ain't ready for us.
Kick your game day off right as the Tops team tackles all the biggest headlines around the league.
Who's got 2 thumbs and loves this next segment?
Sunday mornings on CBS Sports Network.
It's been a sad week in sports.
Yeah.
Really, on the same day, we get the passing of baseball legend Pete Rose. Surprisingly, at the age of 83, I know his health had been deteriorating, but he was signing autographs at a card show on Sunday and found dead in his home on Monday.
Oh, was he really? I didn't even realize that.
Yeah, that was the latest news I had read, was that he was found by someone in his home after, I believe, returning from a card show in Nashville. And there's a picture of him from Sunday. He's noticeably in a wheelchair. Again, his health had been deteriorating, and I believe he'd had 3 heart procedures in the past 5 years. But it was like, honestly, it was a little bit like my father. My father's health had been deteriorating, but when it happened, it was like, what? What, really? Just like now? And this is what Pete Rose feels like. Like you knew things weren't going well, but you didn't think today was the day. So we have that.
Interesting, by the way. We'll get to Mutombo in 7 seconds. Be interesting to see what baseball does. Pete Rose, very volatile figure, obviously, from a number of reasons. Feel free to Google his life. A lot of very not good stuff in there. What baseball does to recognize and how far they're willing to go.
Right.
Everyone understands the deal with Pete Rose and him not being eligible for the Hall.
Wouldn't you assume there'll be a moment of silence at every game today? And then the real question won't be whether they ever put him in the Hall of Fame. And at this point, I just think it sucks no matter what. You could have done it a week ago or 2 years ago or 15 years ago, whenever, and you'd have had some people who'd have been mad just because he gambled on baseball and you can't do that. And he agreed to the ban and it is what it is. But then you'd have had some people who would celebrate it and be like, he belongs in. I don't care. Now you put him in, the people who were always going to be mad are going to be mad. And the people who always wanted him in are also going to be mad because they're going to say you should have done it before he died. So now if you do it, nobody's going to be happy. It's just a messy situation. There was a documentary dropped earlier this year on HBO, 4-part series called like Charlie Hustle and the Case of Pete Rose or something like that. It's very good. And if you're too young or not a baseball fan and you don't really understand the Pete Rose story and why he was this larger than life figure, that documentary did a wonderful job. And in that doc, and you're right, like he's a complicated figure. I'm not vouching for Pete Rose as a man, strictly as a baseball player, But he does say something in that documentary that I think resonated with me, that I can find sympathy for. You know, when we were talking seriously about gambling, and now we're just off topic, I apologize. But when we're talking seriously about gambling, you know what we call it? An addiction. It can be a disease. And there's a lot of things people can be addicted to. Gambling is one of them. Alcohol would be one. Drugs would be another. And Pete Rose made the point, and I know it's not quite apples to apples, and you can push back on it you want. It just sort of made sense to me. He said, you know, I had a disease. I'm paraphrasing here, but he says, I had a disease, and I guess I have the wrong one. If my disease would have been alcohol, you know, they'd have given me a second chance. If my disease was drugs, there are a lot of drug addicts in the Hall of Fame. But my vice happened to be gambling, and for that, I'm doing life in prison. He actually makes the point, there are people who have murdered, been arrested, charged, convicted, sentenced to life in prison, and they get out somehow still someday. And I'm still, you know, I'm doing life in prison for gambling on baseball. And I know that's comparing baseball to our legal system, apples, oranges, all that. But I don't know, that sort of, I wish they would have put him in. I think he belongs. I know he messed up, but that's a pretty severe price to pay for, you know, what it is he actually did. Anyway, that was
Then we got Mutombo, whose reputation was
like the opposite. Like he's the best person on the planet.
Let's talk about this guy.
So what's interesting is I was at Grizzlies Media Day yesterday, and the way that works, they're just bringing us play. You don't know. Like, it's like, hey, here comes John Conchar, and okay, here comes John Morant. You don't know who you're talking to until you see him walking to sit down. And so we're talking to Jaren Jackson Jr., and this news had just broken, and I just sort of assumed his dad played in the NBA during the same time Dikembe played in the NBA. I bet you Jaren's been around Dikembe or something.
His dad was a teammate of Dikembe's at Georgetown.
His roommate. And I didn't even realize. So I assumed Jaren would have a Dikembe story. I didn't assume he's known Dikembe his entire life.
Mm-hmm.
So this was real. And I felt sort of awful because I was like, hey, there's, you know, sad news.
Did you break the news to Jaren?
No, I think he knew, but I was clearly hitting a fresh wound that I didn't realize I was hitting. I was just looking for, one time I was, you know, at a Spurs game and my dad was getting ready to play against Dikembe, and I was out there, you know, I was a ball boy. I just thought there'd be one of those. And he waved his finger at me and I waved my finger at him. And it was like, oh no, that was my dad's roommate. They were close friends, and I've known him my whole life. And he even said, like, I'm sorry, I don't have much for you right now. And he expanded on it later.
Yeah.
Real fresh when I got to him. And one of the things you learn when you start talking to people, because I was also happened to be with Brevin Knight, NBA veteran, who now is, television color analyst for Grizzlies broadcast. Brevin was on with us. Brevin was teammates with Dikembe. And you talk to anybody who's ever met him, teammates with him, it's like the opposite of Pete Rose. There's a lot of Pete Rose former teammates who do not like him at all. They'll just say he's a bad person. He's just a bad guy. You will never hear anything but the best stuff about Dikembe Mutombo. At least that's my experience. It's just 58 years old, brain cancer. I know I say this kind of stuff all the time, and then I forget it very quickly, and I get mad again. But my God, every day you're not dealing with a brain cancer diagnosis, just shut up and be a little more appreciative. That goes for me as well. I'm mad every day about some nonsense, every single day. And then there's like one of our greatest people, you know, is gone at 58 because of brain cancer. Like, what am I bitching about, you know?
Just an incredible human being. And I had the chance to be in his presence a couple times. I unexpectedly met him at my first Final Four. I don't remember all the details exactly, but I think we were at the stadium. This is 2011. Lute Olson was there. Mutombo was there. They might have both been getting honored. I can't remember for what. Keep in mind, he's 2 years removed from being retired from the NBA, which I relearned yesterday. If you would have quizzed me and said, when was Dikembe Mutombo's last year in the NBA, I would have said 04. Dude played until 09. Incredible, 18 seasons. He thought that I was like a personal friend of Lute Olson's, which I was not. And Lute had left something behind, some sort of token or talisman. I can't remember what. And we just got to talking for 2 minutes. And that voice, man, unbelievable. just really, really cool. And I think one or two other times I happened to be in his presence at a basketball game. Just incredible. 3 seasons at Georgetown, 2-time All Big East selection, 2-time Big East Defensive Player of the Year, averaged 15.2 points, 12.2 boards, and 4.7 blocks as a senior in 1991. He was a 3rd-team All-American selection that season. I would say after the fact, he was at least one team too low on that. He is 3rd in program history in block shots with 354 and 12th in rebounds there. 18 seasons in the NBA, made the Hall of Fame in 2015, has 4 Defensive Player of the Year awards in 95, 97, 98, and 01. That ties for the most ever. 8-time All-Star, 2nd in NBA in career blocks with 3,289. Jersey number retired by both the Hawks and the Nuggets. Rare to have your number retired by 2 franchises, but he's one that obviously clears the club. He was the first global ambassador for the NBA appointed by David Stern upon his retirement in 2009. And I'm going to read you verbatim what Georgetown had in his story yesterday. Mutombo became a full-time advocate and ambassador with the goal of helping people in need to gain access to health services and educational and economic opportunities necessary to live better lives and for their children to grow strong and become healthy, productive members of their communities. In 1997, he founded the Dikembe Mutombo Foundation with the mission to improve the health, education, and quality of life for people of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, my aside here, where he was from. The statement continues, one major project of the Dikembe Mutombo Foundation was the construction of a new general hospital in the capital city of Kinshasa in December of 2007, and it cost $29 million. The Biamba Marie Mutombo Hospital opened in Congo, named for Dikembe's mom, who he lost early in his life. The hospital has treated close to 200,000 men and women and children in the near 30 years since. Mutombo also served on the board of the National Constitution Center, Special Olympics International, the CDC Foundation, and the National Board for the U.S. Fund for UNICEF. We are talking about an all-time unbelievable human, beloved by everyone. I put up on Twitter on Monday a very, very, very small aside, but his Nuggets team that was down 2-0 to the Sonics in the post-Jordan 94 playoffs. Remember, Seattle's coming off, giving the 93 Bulls like a really good go of it, and the Sonics are in full force, right? And that team comes back when first-round series are what they should still be, a best-of-5, not a best-of-7, because I can easily make the case you have a best-of-7 in 94. We never get that moment. And the Nuggets, with very little prideful history in the NBA. Obviously they have got the ABA, the crossover. They just weren't a franchise that was adorned with glory. And Mutombo's literally at the center of it. I think he has 8 blocks in that game 5. He catches the ball as time expires. And there's that in one of the indelible shots in NBA history, but certainly within the 90s. And I've always wanted to know who was the cameraman working for NBC who got that shot, because he was Johnny on the spot. Like the game ends, he's right there in the paint, and because that camera person was right there, it just provides you. It's not like most classic TV video moments where a shot is given to you because the camera person is they're on it, but they're where they're supposed to be outside the field or the court of play. And this is the game ends, and he's right there, right over him in the paint, hovering him as Mutombo's like, just.
I can see it today. I can't remember playoff series I've attended. I remember that shot. I remember that moment.
Incredible. And the NBA doesn't really allow for Cinderella March Madness type of stories. It just, because you don't have as many teams, they're full of professionals, they're not one and dones. But if there was one team that kind of had that vibe, it was that Nuggets team, which also, by the way, almost did it again in the next round and forced a game 7. I think it was against Utah there. Again, a very small portion of Mutombo's legacy. And frankly, for as great as he was on the court, and part of, the post-Ewing Hoya paranoia right there with Alonzo Mourning, pre-Allen Iverson. We obviously felt compelled to talk about him on the podcast here because, he had a very, very big presence at a time when college basketball was even bigger than that it is today, at a Georgetown program that we've talked about this semi-regularly over the years. Just even then, after Ewing, Georgetown, it was one of the 5 to 7 most important programs, a formative program for you and I in our upbringing, and part of why we're on this podcast. Part of why we cover college basketball is because we grew to love the sport. And why do we grow to love the sport? Because of coaches like John Thompson, because of programs like Georgetown, because of players like Dikembe Mutombo. And for Mutombo to go on to be just one of the very best defensive players ever, and for that to be something that runs kind of alongside him, it's a lot like another classic big man we lost earlier this year in Bill Walton. We've lost two absolute pillars of humanitarian causes and such positive, uplifting energy outside of what they did in basketball. It's like basketball was their vessel to be true massive changes for the world. And it is not an exaggeration to say that for all of the money and time that Dikembe Mutombo gave, and he should be an absolute model for us all. And it is cruel that this man was taken to us at 58 years old because of brain cancer. I mean, this news.
I mean, we got scumbags living to 90, and we lose Dikembe after 58. That don't seem fair.
And because of what he dedicated his life to, both during his career, but particularly after, like, he has saved the lives of untold amounts of people, thousands and thousands and thousands of people, because he made sure there were hospitals in Africa where people needed these infrastructures to improve the quality of their lives. Gone way too soon. I would anticipate Georgetown, at least I'm going to outright recommend it. There needs to be some sort of patch for Mutombo on the uniforms this season. Look forward to seeing what the NBA does, obviously, to continue to
just the finger
well,
on
the finger, well, and whatever. And I'm frankly, I'm vamping off the top of my head here. And I'm sure the NBA has some type of award like this, but the NFL has the Walter Payton Man of the Year award that basically represents the kind of goodwill and acts while active in the league that are awarded each year, and they get announced the night before the Super Bowl. I'm sure the NBA has something similar to that, but whatever it is, they need to rename it after Dikembe Mutombo, because it is quite clear that he is as shining of an example for this as anyone, and nothing but the best to his loved ones, his friends and family that knew him. It was an honor to get to meet him, and man, that's just a huge loss for the world. Gone way too soon, and particularly with brain cancer, it's a major downer. And I don't know if you saw Masai Ujiri's press conference with the Raptors, who's from Africa, had a very close personal relationship. If you have not seen it, go seek it out, YouTube or anywhere else. It's about 5 minutes and change. You get the real impact, person to person, of what Mutombo meant to one of his fellow countrymen, but also someone in basketball, a friend, a human, someone who, you know, was probably the most influential person for Masai Ujiri even coming into basketball. And then I'll end on this. You've got a Duke freshman to be, Kaman Malawash, who's from South Sudan, who's probably only going to be playing for Duke this year because of Dikembe Mutombo. And there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people whose lives have been changed for the better through the world and pathways of basketball coming out of Africa because of Dikembe Mutombo. No, he wasn't the absolute only one, but he was as big of an influence and as bright of a light to enable the NBA to have its global academy in Africa and continue to expand the game globally, and to really be as big of a figure for sports and basketball in that country as it's ever had there. So yeah, major downer, but we had to pay respects to just an all-time human being, and in that respect, really one of the greatest sportsmen we've ever known.
Also, part of his legacy, much smaller part, but still, name dropped by some of the biggest hip-hop stars in history.
Okay, there we go.
He's name dropped by Kendrick Lamar in How Much a Dollar Cost. Name dropped by Kanye West in All Day with Paul McCartney. Name dropped by Future and Drake in Jumpman. Name dropped by Post Malone in Wow. That's
okay.
That means something.
That's big. Yeah, the finger wag is classic. And I did say this as well. We can wrap here, but I so very much appreciated the thing about Mutombo was on the court, just an eraser, ridiculous defender, and parts of his game were certainly like an old school defender. Like, he got drafted very, very high. I want to say 4th maybe in the draft when he went
91.
Okay, 4th and 91. Same player comes out in 2024. He's not going to be a top 10 pick. He's just not. So he benefited somewhat in the time that he played in, but a lot of what made him great in his athleticism still would translate today. But it was the fact that he was that good of a competitor, but while at the same time, I'm not talking off the court, I'm talking on the court, always so self-aware and humorously self-aware that he was almost empowered by this, and made following the NBA that much more fun. Like, it gave him his power that he was able to be this ridiculous rim protector, an ultra elite defender, but at the same time, ever ready with a smile, big giving heart, and willing to laugh at himself. And in the process, bring a real fraternal brotherhood to the league. I saw it got passed around. I think it was Jasmine Watkins who got this viral on Monday. This classic callback from when Mutombo and Jordan would talk at All-Star games, and Mutombo would always hold it over Jordan's head that Jordan never dunked on him. And then later in that and then whatever it was, 90, 92, 93 All-Star game, later in that very same season, Jordan finally gets him, and it's vintage Jordan, like fake around the baseline, right up, meet you on the top floor, and he dunks right on him. And then right away, Jordan giving him the finger wag. And Mutombo could take that as well as anyone. Right. I love the fact that someone that good, that dominant, was also that funny and that willing to laugh and smile at himself. And it really made him a unique sports figure.
Yeah, it's sad.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
It's sad.
Want to get out of here?
Yeah.
Hey, you want to meet up in podcast in like 2 days in Chicago?
Hey, I'll meet you in Chicago.
You want to do that? Why not?
I'm going to meet you in Chicago, and then Thursday, after we get done with Big Ten Media Day and we get done with everything else, I'm going to try to convince you to drive up to Milwaukee for Game 3.
That will not be. I'm not driving to Milwaukee.
Game 3 Mets Brewers in Milwaukee, hour 15 from our hotel in Chicago.
I don't. Never say never. I don't think I'm driving to Milwaukee. I gotta be at DePaul the next morning. I think it's in morning practice. That might be a little difficult for me. However, PSA, GP and I are taking the pod on the road. We're going to be at Big Ten Media Day on Thursday, and we'll have a bunch of stuff for you. We're going to do a few things that we haven't done before, and then we will have a pod for you, kind of talking all things Big Ten, but we're going to be talking to some coaches, maybe a few players. We haven't done it before. We're looking forward to it. Obviously, Big Ten and CBS, have quite a nice arrangement here from a media rights deal. And hey, why not get a little in-person pod action in the preseason? Very much looking forward to. As a heads up, as much as we would love to do it, we will not be doing a podcast from every high major media day. But this is a new thing we're trying, and we're very excited to do it. So keep an eye out. I think we were going to try and go live. No promises, by the way. No promises. We'll get you a podcast Thursday. Try and get something live, and then you'll have Big Ten related stuff coming in the feed in the hours and days that.
If you want the Eye on College Basketball podcast to come to your media day, you better strike $1 billion deal with CBS.
Nah, you said it, not me. There you go.
Otherwise, we'll just watch the clips on YouTube or something.
I can't wait. Thursday, GP.
I can't wait. I might see you tomorrow.
There's a chance that's true as well. Yes.
I mean, you planning on eating dinner?
I didn't really want to get into it on the show, but I got an old college buddy. I'm going to go meet him. He lives in Chicago. So, I mean, you can come over.
No, forget it. I know when I'm not wanted.
Just show up unannounced. He won't mind.
I know when I'm not wanted. I'll find something else to do. I got friends in Chicago. I'll see what Zoe's up to.
Okay. Let's go.
Shouts to Devon County. Shouts to Chester, South Carolina. Shouts to Terry Teagle. He's a legend. Huck Larnell. Thank you guys once again for watching and listening to the Eye on College Basketball podcast. If you're not subscribed, please go subscribe to podcasts wherever you can subscribe to podcasts, Apple, Spotify. There's more of us than there are of them. Needs to be reflected in the comments. So do that, and we'll talk to you again real soon. Norlander, I hope you have fun with your